Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As official opposition critic for employment and social development, I want to thank the member from Scarborough Rouge River for bringing this important motion forward, especially because this debate falls just days away, I should say a day away, from the 25th anniversary of the all-party motion to eradicate child poverty. Mr. Speaker, at the end of last week, I had the privilege of attending a phenomenal conference in Winnipeg, Manitoba, which addressed a large component of this motion, affordable and accessible childcare. The NDP was the only federal party whose leader was in attendance, and I want to take a moment now to personally thank the leader of the official opposition for making it his priority to be in attendance. Mr. Speaker, I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the important announcement made by the leader of the official opposition last month. An NDP government would see no parent in this country paying more than $15 a day for childcare, and we would create 1 million new childcare spaces. Mr. Speaker, that announcement cuts to the very heart of the childcare crisis in Canada right now. It cuts to the very heart of child poverty, and it cuts to the very heart of the eradication of poverty. Mr. Speaker, right now in this country, two parents working full-time at minimum wage would struggle to pay for a full-time daycare spot. In Winnipeg last week, the leader of the official opposition said that is not okay. No more than $15 a day for accessible, quality daycare. And, as you know, Mr. Speaker, the NDP has also called for a $15 an hour minimum wage for federally regulated and federal employment. No parent should have to choose between affordability and safety. No parent, Mr. Speaker. In 2014, in a beautiful country, developed country like Canada, one of the top, in the top G7, it's absolutely flabbergasting that we have child poverty. Unfortunately, in this country, eradication of poverty is not a given. Canada ranks 23rd amongst the countries in the OECD. 23rd, Mr. Speaker, despite the fact that we like to see ourselves as part of the G20 and the G7. Not only that, but when it comes to public spending on early learning and childcare, Canada ranks dead last amongst comparable countries. We can do better. Simply put, we are not prioritizing our young people, and that will have a significant consequence on the future of this country if we don't turn things around. There are currently 900,000 children in Canada in need of affordable, quality daycare spots. This government promised the creation of 125,000 new spaces in 2006. Where are those spots, Mr. Speaker? Not a single new spot was created. The importance of quality early childhood education in the development of children cannot be understated. It prevents social exclusion and ensures that every child has an opportunity to develop into a contributing member of our society. Studies suggest that growing up in a household that lacks adequate financial resources for basic family needs has long-term negative impacts. According to a research by Pierre Fortin, Quebec's model of childcare had a positive effect on the economy, and we know how much that government likes to believe they're good economic managers. More than 70,000 mothers were able to join the workforce and generate a return of $1.75 for every dollar spent on childcare. Mr. Speaker, in 1989, my friend Ed Broadbent introduced a motion that was passed unanimously in this House. All parliamentarians in this place came together and committed to eradicating child poverty because all of them could agree that one child living in poverty in this country is one child too many. And yet here we are, Mr. Speaker. 1 in 7 children in this country are currently living in poverty. And Mr. Speaker, when we look at Aboriginal children, the numbers are bleaker. 2 in 5 Aboriginal children in Canada are living in poverty. Mr. Speaker, on these numbers alone, I implore all members of the House to stand up and support my colleague's motion that words are not enough. We need to take action. Let us all come together again in a renewed commitment for the betterment of all Canadian children. Surely every member in this House still agrees that one child living in poverty is one too many. Surely, with all of the divisions that exist within these walls, we can agree on that, Mr. Speaker. I want to take a moment to thank a mentor of mine, Mr. Speaker, Laurel Rothman, who has dedicated her career to eradicating child poverty in Canada. I have the deepest respect for her tenacity and dedication. In our short time working together, I have learned so much from her, both factually and ethically. She is my hero in countless ways, and I wish her the very best in her retirement. You are an inspiration, Laurel, and I'm a better person and Member of Parliament for having worked with you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. Mr. Speaker, this Conservative government has led the country into such a housing crisis that 1 in 4 Canadian families spends more than 1/3 of its overall income on housing. Housing prices in Vancouver and outskirts like Surrey and Delta are sky high, and yet Canada is still the only country in the G8 without a national housing strategy. I am devastated by that, Mr. Speaker. Housing costs are among the top concerns of my constituents in Surrey, and I am sure the same holds true for the constituents of many members in this House. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, the NDP proposed Bill C-400, an act to ensure secure, accessible and affordable housing for Canadians. Unfortunately, it was rejected by the government. Had it passed, it would have addressed the plight of 300,000 homeless Canadians and approximately 1.5 million households, many with children that cannot access a decent, affordable home. For the NDP, a housing strategy that establishes a structured coordination between the federal and provincial levels of government, as well as with other relevant organizations, is of fundamental importance. Mr. Speaker, the eradication of poverty will only be possible when the national housing crisis is addressed. The Canadian Federation of Municipalities is pleading with the Conservative government to invest in long-term funding for affordable and sustainable housing. Due to cuts from this Conservative government, many low-income renters are in a state of panic. Since the 70s, low-income renters have received federal subsidies, but this government is clawing them back, and people are left without a solution. In First Nations communities, the situation is even more dire. Mr. Speaker, this motion isn't asking for too much. Quite simply, we are asking this Conservative government to make the elimination of child poverty a priority, not just in words, but in real actions, and to develop a poverty reduction plan with timelines and measurable benchmarks that would include components to address children's poverty. That would involve taking action on the crisis of poverty for Indigenous children, making housing more affordable for low and income Canadians, creating a national early childhood education and childcare program, addressing childhood nutrition and improving economic security for families. Mr. Speaker, children are poor because their parents are poor. No child, Mr. Speaker, chooses to be born into poverty. Because of that, it means that addressing poverty in a comprehensive way is essential to addressing childhood poverty and to ensure the future of our country. Poverty affects 3 million Canadians. 3 million. Children, seniors, Indigenous people, persons living with disabilities, single parents and recent immigrants are all more likely to live in poverty. Over 967,000 children live in poverty and 22,000 adults under age 25 are homeless. Canada ranks 15th out of 17th amongst peer countries when it comes to child poverty rates, and BC has the ignominious privilege, if you can call it that, Mr. Speaker, to have the highest child poverty rate in Canada. 38% of children living with single parents live in poverty, and 40% of Indigenous children live in poverty. Mr. Speaker, I said it already and I'll say it again. Collectively, we can do better. We as members of Parliament can stand together in this House and recommit to eliminating child poverty. What more meaningful way to mark the 25th anniversary of the unanimous motion passed in this House with an objective we've yet to achieve? I ask all my colleagues to support this motion because no one should be left behind, and certainly, foremostly, no child. And Mr. Speaker, let me remind the House, no child chooses to be born in poverty. and it behooves each and every one of us to address this stigma on our country straight away.